Oh, it's Phil Crowshaw again. And in this episode of Passions, I'm thrilled to be joined by Julia Fry from Extreme E. Enjoy. Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Passions. And today I'm quite excited actually because I'm going to be talking to Julia Fry from Extreme E. So if you're wondering now what Extreme E is about, you're soon going to find out. So a very warm welcome to Passions, Julia. Tell us who you are, what you do and what your passion is.
Hi, Phil. Very nice to be joining you today. My name is Julia Fry. I'm the head of communications for Extreme E, and I'll tell you exactly what that is as we go through this. But essentially, it's electric racing. It's I think it's the newest motorsport going. It's about racing in remote environments in places affected by climate change, so that we can essentially use sport for purpose and helping to move towards clean energy, transport, mobility, all ways of life that help have a lower impact on the planet and, if we can, help combat climate change.
Absolutely wonderful. And today is the 8th of July, the night after, we've got to mention it, haven't we? The fact that football's one step closer to coming home. England last night beat Denmark in the semi-final to get to the final. And so I think it's fair to say that it would be inappropriate not to talk about that game, or at least get your insights into that game, especially under a topic of passions.
Oh, well, yes, and I forgot my passion there. Let's start there. My passion is sports and communication. I played sports from a young age. Football, I was one of the only girls growing up at school who played football. I captained my school, went on to play in university. Sport for me has always played a massive role in my life. And so last night was amazing. I mean, it's big moments like that, football, when you bring a nation together. I mean, sport unifies like nothing else. I mean, I found myself thinking last night, well, brilliant, because we've had such a bad year. Our country needs this. It's moments like that and Olympics that really tie us together and unify. But then at the same time, I was thinking I was sad for the team that loses, because everyone in the world has needed it this year. So it happens to be us finally. I think luck was on our side a little bit last night, but it's so often been against us that, to be honest, we have to take that in sport. Super exciting. Ready for the final on Sunday, and got to keep the belief that we can do it. But yeah, I think last night was a really good example leading into today of why sport can be a passion, and it has such a greater sort of effect when things go well.
Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, and you're right. It was so galvanizing, I think, last night. Maybe unless you live in Scotland or Wales, but we'll leave that one for now. But it was so galvanizing, wasn't it? To see everybody together. And what I also thought was really interesting as a business consultant, business coach myself in my day job, as it were. It was amazing how much I saw mention of the fact that the similarities between what people in small businesses and careers and startups and all the rest of it can take from what they were experiencing last night and they were seeing in terms of leadership, especially from Gareth Southgate.
Absolutely. I mean, sport translates so well into real life and, business situations. It's all about teamwork at the end of the day. It's all about, celebrating success, but also when things are hard, never giving up. Leadership is a thing. Teamwork is a thing. It's all things that we experience in our daily work careers, or at least I do. And I've always sought out those sort of team experiences, and that's how I see success, is through teamwork and leadership and learning, and also understanding failure. I mean, being an England fan and a Southampton fan, I understand failure quite well at times, but it's about also recognizing when you have success, not just going on to the next one, but learning how you got that success, what worked well, and sort of analyzing situations so that you can replicate that. But yeah, I think there's a lot that we can take from a business sense from the sports.
I don't think I'm going to feel too sorry for you, because as a Bolton fan, trust me, I have had a lot more pain than you, Julia. That's all I can say on the matter.
Yeah, I guess at least we're in the big leagues, but we've been down there. We've got. I remember a double season of, I think, double relegation one couple of years, but we're back up there now. So yeah, I mean, we can certainly have a talk about failure and disappointment, but it sounds like you know where I'm coming from there.
Oh, I certainly do. I certainly do. Brilliant. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit now about then Extreme E. Obviously, as I was saying before we came on, I got quite excited about it because I watched the race, the last racing. Was it Senegal? I think it was.
Senegal, yes.
Yeah, and I was just hooked right from the word go. So tell me how you got involved in Extreme E, and then for those people that don't really know what the heck we're talking about, what exactly is Extreme E?
Well, I think I was super lucky, and I think it was all about the right time, and sometimes things work out just when they should. I was working at the Clipper Around the World Yacht Race previous to this for 6 odd years, and realised that it was time to do something new. It was the right timing, and at exactly the same time I was thinking about that, I saw this opportunity on LinkedIn for something called Extreme E, which I hadn't really heard of before then. I think it had launched like the month before, so I had to give it a little look up. And as soon as I read about it, I mean, it just ticked every single box for me. It was about racing in remote environments, places that I'd never been to. When we're going to the ice cap in Greenland next month, which you just don't normally get the chance to go places like that. I've travelled a lot in sport, so it's hard to find some places that I haven't really been so far. But then it also had this purpose-driven aspect to it, which is built into the very sort of fibre of its creation, which is about using sport for purpose. And in this sense, it's about raising awareness and hoping to, create action. The transport sector contributes to about 30% of global emissions, and that is huge. And we are at the beginning of probably the biggest shift in transport that we've ever heard of since wheels and motors were invented. We're heading into electrification, and I think we're now understanding as a planet, the sense of action and consequence, and we need to move towards clean mobility in order to slow down what's happening to our planet if we want a good future. So it gripped me immediately. What was also quite nice, where it's a new sport and nobody had heard of it, the passion that I felt from those that were already running it on the inside. So, Alejandro Agag, Ali Russell, who's our, he's our engine, our powerhouse, who drives it all from the inside. The way they spoke about it, even though I had never heard about Extreme E before, I knew that it was going to go somewhere and that these guys had ambition. So yeah, it ticked every box. And over the last two and a half years, we've been able to build a sport from an absolute blank slate, create our own sporting format, which is terribly exciting, launch it, bring it to the fans, and it seems to be going well. And it's so gratifying when we hear people like you, who are obviously sports fans, you're into your motorsport, to say that you're watching it, you're enjoying it, because that is a huge sense of sort of achievement, and that's very satisfying.
Yeah, and of course it must be, from a PR point of view, a communications point of view, it must help no end the fact that you've got names like Lewis Hamilton involved and Nico Rosberg and Jenson Button. So real names from your point of view in terms of getting people's attention, which we all know what it's about in PR, getting people's attention in the first place and engagement. Having those sorts of people involved must be quite helpful.
Massively helpful, yes. I mean, when I first had that chat with Ali before, it only just launched, he mentioned names like, we're going to have the biggest names in this sport. And I believed him, because when you speak to Ali, everything he says is believable because it's done with such passion. But to actually pull that off and be part of the inside story of how we did that, I mean, the guys running Extreme E have endless passion, ambition, and to have Lewis Hamilton, Jenson Button, Nico Rosberg, Carlos Sainz, Sebastian Loeb, we've just signed McLaren. I mean, for a series to do that before we even went racing was just incredible. But I think it's a sign of the times. I think people know that we're heading towards a new sort of future, a new way of doing motorsport, and Alejandro Agag has tapped into how to make this mainstream, exciting, kind of reinvent sporting formats that have been around for years and years and actually bring a whole new sort of lens to them. I think our goal with Extreme E was to just do things differently, break boundaries. It was obviously started with Formula E, which I think took the industry by storm. But this is going a step further, and we're really getting out into places where you can see climate change happening. And I think people care. I think people, when they're faced with it and understand the facts, they do care. We are all in this together. But it's certainly helpful from a communications point of view when you have the big names of people that you really look up to in the sport, whether you like electrification, on board with that idea or not. You're on board with those sort of heroes of the sport, and when they sort of evangelize that message for you, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and I know from my own point of view, when I was watching the race, and then suddenly they said, right, okay, yeah, we've got Lewis Hamilton on Zoom. He's going to zoom in and talk to the drivers. Straight away, whether it's consciously or even subconsciously, the credibility of the sport goes to the next level. And then you go into the control room. I don't know if that's the official title for it. You go into the control area, the support area, yeah. And Nico Rosberg is actually stood there with his headphones on. Straight away, you think, oh, this is credible. The other thing that I noticed as well was that because of the environments and because of the nature of the extreme elements of what in effect is almost like 4x4 racing in context of what people might recognize. The speed wasn't the key factor. You weren't comparing the speed of a Formula E car with a Formula One car, because the actual excitement was the movement of the cars and the fact they shoot in the air, God knows how high, and people are being rocked about, the drivers are being rocked about. And of course, the other great thing as well, which I would like you to talk about actually, is the emphasis on the equality thing, in that you've got a female driver and a male driver, and ultimately it's their team performance that's going to make the difference. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously when it was first launched, the idea was around awareness around climate change, but we realized that sport has this incredible platform for just doing good and positivity. And when we were, we literally used to talk around a boardroom around decisions around sporting formats and things, and it was brought up, we've never actually had a gender equal sporting format in motorsport. Why not? It exists in other sports, in tennis and water sports and things, but it's not happening in motorsport. Why not? And we couldn't answer why not. So it evolved, and I thought it wasn't necessarily a brave move. It just hadn't been done before, and I think it's harder when other sports have to sort of adapt and bring in new rules. But when you have a blank slate and can write your own rules, I just love the open-mindedness of the series and the guys running it to say, yes, this could be a platform for many things, and equality, more and more increasingly we're all considering it now. And it's great to see, more females being given opportunities, not just in motorsport, but sport, in commentary, in presenting roles, in business, everything. I mean, the answer, people say why, we just always say, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
I think that's what sets Extreme E apart in, more than being out in these remote environments, because there are things like the Dakar Rally. It's not fully new to be out in remote environments playing sport, but it is new to be seeing, I think, males and females working together in the same championship at the same time, because a lot of the time it will be the guys play first and then you have to stay around and watch the females, and everybody's switched off by that point. Putting them in the same car at the same time, all having equal input on the success of the team, standing on the podium together, it's incredibly powerful, and it's so exciting. I can't tell you, it's brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot of people probably watching this, including my good self, that are very jealous of you right now, Julia. I'm not going to lie. There's a bit of envy flowing at the moment in terms of, but then at the same time, you saw the ad. This is a thing we talk a lot with clients about taking action. You saw the ad. Maybe a lot of people saw the ad and thought, oh, I'm not sure, maybe. And then the time went by and they didn't apply. You took the action and you applied, and then I guess you did the research. When you did the interview, you were prepared. So I do challenge people. A lot of people say on this, we've done so many interviews now, probably heading towards 100 fairly soon. And I hear this a lot about, I was lucky. And I do tend to challenge it, Julia. I'm sorry, I do, because I think people just take for granted what they did in order to increase their chances of that success.
Yeah, I think I'm the first to say to anyone, "Oh, I was lucky, I was lucky." But you do at some point have to give yourself some credit and also recognize what went well around the way. Because I mean, I do feel very lucky. So when people say, you know, they're envious or I'd love to be doing that, I do feel lucky, and I never take it for granted. But the lead up, I didn't just click a link and apply and was lucky. I guess what happened is the experiences that led up to that point that stand out on your CV. And I think you can create your own luck by pursuing things and I guess making the most of relationships. I don't think I ever go into a relationship thinking, what can I get out of this? But my passion is people and communications. And if you communicate well, you build relationships that have good bases, it gets you into sort of roles and experiences. And they sort of, I guess they've just started snowballing for me. I think I was lucky in the sense of how I first got into my career. I did my degree in public relations, and it involved a year in industry. I loved sport, as we say. I grew up playing football, so my target was to work in football. So I was lucky in the sense that my university had good links. Somebody that did my course was running the communications at Arsenal Football Club. They ran an internship for Arsenal. I was the only girl in my PR course that really liked football. So when I walked into that interview and could tell them all the stats around football and why I was interested in the role, I got it. And I think it led me into my career. But leading up to Extreme E, I've done Olympics, started in Vancouver and London, and marathons in London, New York, Chicago, Wimbledon. The Clipper race, even though it wasn't as high a profile as some of those roles, it was hard. It was often in communications, it's easy if you're working for the Olympics or Arsenal. You don't have to work hard to be proactive. But if you're in a smaller sport like sailing, you have to work really hard to be proactive and make noise about that. I think when I came to apply for Extreme E, they saw that I'd traveled a lot for work, which you have to. I guess sports hard work. So when you say lucky, to get here, we've done a lot of hours. I've worked away a lot, tried to balance life when all of my friends were getting married and having children. I haven't done that yet. I've focused on career and travel and things. So it often does come at a cost. Relationships are harder to maintain when you're on the road all the time. It's not always that glamorous. When I was doing the sailing, we used to literally have 24-hour days where you'd be up all night doing boat arrivals in the pouring rain in Uruguay. But at the same point, you could never complain, because you'd either be somewhere like Uruguay, or even I remember having a terrible night up on my own all night in Jamaica, of all places. And when I called home to say, oh, I've had a really stressful night, my parents were like, but you're in Jamaica, we're stuck at home. I was like, well, yes, but it can be stressful still. But then I realized, you have the small wins, like you might have worked all night, but you got to see the sunrise. And how often, when I'm sat here during COVID, it's those moments that, keep you going, the memories.
Yeah.
So yeah,
gosh.
I mean, I do feel lucky. Bottom line, I do feel very lucky, but I do think you can create your own luck. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. And of course, as we said, we're recording this, hopefully what we think is towards the end-ish of the pandemic crisis, albeit nobody's really quite sure, are they? Nobody's going down to Ladbrokes just yet and putting a bet on. How have you coped with that? Because, for somebody who's traveling all the time and is passionate about it and enjoys it so much, has it been a little bit of a break from it, or has it been a nightmare in terms of what you're used to?
It's been a little bit of both. I was commuting, 5 days a week, and it's quite a long commute. We live down in Southampton, so I was, 2 hours each way to work on a train. That's why, passions come into it. You have to be passionate about what you do. So the balance of being home more and not traveling has been brilliant. I didn't know how I'd cope with that, because I've always just been on the go and traveling. But actually, I really enjoyed it. We're very lucky to have a house that I enjoy spending time in. Obviously did all the things like, you pour your time into home decor and, building a bar in the back garden and things for your friends to come over to. when they could anyway. But I think, I mean, to be honest, I've had the busiest year in the sense that we would just worked all the way through it for Extreme E. We were trying to launch a series during COVID. I mean, the whole of last year, I don't think, even though I was home, my husband probably didn't see me even more. That makes maybe doesn't make a lot of sense, but I was just buried in the laptop. We didn't stop. I've never worked so hard as the last year. Especially in communications during a pandemic, I guess for a sport, we were lucky in that we weren't having to, halt our season and adapt to the issues that most sports had when they didn't have any sport going on. But we were still focused on, launching a sport during COVID, trying to land sponsors, teams to want to come in and invest in a new series when, there's a global pandemic. But I don't think I'd have got the full ability to focus full time on it if we hadn't been at home. That comes with its own issues. You have to find balance, and when it gets to 10 p.m. each night and the laptop's still going, you have to learn when to stop. So I wish there'd been a bit more balance. Sometimes I was a bit jealous of friends going on furlough, but equally, we have security in that job. So I've learned that I can be home. I've really liked it. There's a lot of value that you get from being home too, which was a good lesson to learn, that I could sit still.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. It is about adapting, isn't it? And how important it's probably a silly question really, but how important has the technology been in terms of coping and moving forward? I joke sometimes with people like that. I've been interviewing people for many years, and Zoom was a normal way of interviewing people remotely. And if ever I mentioned it in passing to somebody, and I mentioned Zoom, they thought it was an ice lolly. And now all of a sudden, you mention it, people know it, people are more confident. There's also that, isn't there, of don't point that camera towards me. And now people are jumping on and talking and chatting. And in fact, almost it's gone to the other extreme where they're tired of it a little bit. What do they call it? Zoom weary, they call it, don't they? So how important has all that been in terms of keeping things moving?
Massive, I would say, both on the business and the social sense. I mean, from a business perspective, Extreme E was always built around not having fans on site. So we've always had to think about, interactivity, virtual streaming, accessing the site without actually being there. So Zoom, I think COVID has pushed forward the IT and sort of technology that we have in a virtual sense by 20 odd years. It created a necessity, and I think for our business it was amazing. We were always going to be planning to do things virtually, but obviously the technology has just allowed that to be so much better, and people just to find that normal. From a social sense, the beginning, I'm sure, like all of us at the beginning, we were all inviting to each other to different Zoom parties. My sister lives in Argentina, so being able to have connection was so important, and to be able to connect the family together. I guess it normalized it for like my parents, because they've I think it's been huge for people that have been on their own. I've been lucky that I've had neighbors that are nearby that you could meet in the park or go for a walk with, but for my parents and older people that might be scared about getting out, I think it's been a really, really key way to communicate. I think we've reached the point now where I love just having phone calls over Zooms, because it's quite tiring. I actually had to go to the chiropractor, because I'm probably doing it now, but I realized that when you're looking at a Zoom, I kind of look forward into it, and I don't know why, but created all these like neck issues, which I have to be really careful about. But yeah, I love now the balance of actually seeing people in person and having a phone call. But Zoom certainly, it's just been such a big part for all of our lives, really, isn't it?
It's funny you should say that, because I have had a couple of people say to me, do you mind if we just have a phone call?
Yeah, honestly, I love it because I think we were at the stage when you could do 8 or 9 back-to-back Zoom meetings in a day, and it's a brilliant way of connecting when you can see people and gauge off their reactions. But now it's like, if it's not more than 2 people, it's nice just to have a phone call, I think.
Yeah,
although this
absolutely.
is great. It's great to actually see you, Phil, of course.
Yes, of course, absolutely. And it's not great for me to see you, because you've got all that lovely hair and I ain't got any. But then that's life. That's the way, throw the dice, and that's what happens. So let's talk a little bit about communication and PR, which fascinates me because I had a background, corporate. Part of my background was I was headed up communications in Thomas Cook, the travel company in Peterborough.
Yeah.
And now my day job, if you like, is business development, of which there's key part is sales and marketing, of course, and digital media. What would you say has changed most in communication terms in your area of expertise in the last, I don't know, what, 5 or 10 years?
I think there's a lot more emphasis. I think people seem to be trying to take out the middle channel of media and communications and actually speak direct to fans. There's so much more emphasis on, creating your social media audience, as a series or as an athlete. Even athletes are now, rather than having to rely on the communications through, their club or a series, it's being able to speak directly to fans. Things like streaming channels and TikToks, and you're getting more of an insight into the people that play sport, or the key spokespeople. Now, if your CEO or your athlete doesn't have their own social media channel, it's unheard of, which I think is probably frustrating for journalists and PRs in a sense, because you're not being that creative sort of middle person. I think that communications is just adapted now that you've got many more channels to use as well. It's not just your traditional means. It's before it'd be about you really using the power of print journalism. I'd say online is now the way that we put our emphasis, and social media channels and growth of audience. I think there's more scope, there's more options. We have to be very adaptable to new technologies. It's once you've mastered Zoom, you're onto podcasts, and audio's come back in. That's been huge, isn't it? I think as communications, we've got so many more tools open to us, but then that in themselves can create more issues. You've got more to manage. There's more ways to, I guess, open yourself up to, I wouldn't say crises, but issues. If you tweet something that's, not great for the brand, or, it's all searchable. It stays there online, doesn't it? So. Yeah,
one of those dreaded moments when one of your drivers starts tweeting at 2 a.m. after 6 hours in the pub after the England game. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've just got to realize that if you're in the public world, it doesn't even have to be something you record and put out. It could be anyone, like in the street filming you and putting something out, or taking a snippet that's going to go around social media in minutes. You just have to be very careful about what you say to who, because it can be misconstrued or, picked up. And we all have a voice now. That's the other thing. It's not just athletes and people in high profile positions that have social media now. It's all of us. We get to almost hear and see people's inner minds working, which is amazing. When you're watching sport, sometimes you can watch it via Twitter or something, and everyone's sort of getting their opinions, and it's a shared experience. But there's just so many more channels, and the landscape is so much bigger to navigate.
And we also talk a lot now, don't we, about being authentic. Is that also a critical factor, albeit it's a balance, because you can be too authentic and be yourself totally. And so, for example, I don't know, but maybe if you and I were totally authentic, we might be using a few expletives in this conversation. I don't know you, so I don't know, but just maybe.
Maybe.
So just maybe, exactly. So that whole area as well of personal brand, I guess, is becoming more and more important, is it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the key is being authentic with your sense of authenticism, isn't it? I mean, people can spot if it's real or not, and I think that's important. Is just finding out what really resonates with you and being true to that. I think when you get involved in certain brands and things, and if it always works better and it's more powerful and more impactful if you can tell it comes from a place of authenticism. And I think what is quite nice when we talk about Extreme E and this idea around sustainability is that we're better to start and put our hands up and say we're not perfect, we don't know everything, but we're willing to learn. And I think that being human is part of being authentic as well, and not trying to be perfect. I think what's bad about social media is people who, I guess I'm thinking about more on the influencer side of things, who portray unrealistic expectations or images, and they try and branch this off as being authentic. But there's more and more conversations now about influencers having to really be transparent about when they're using filters and things, because that all comes down to authenticity. It's about being real as people, and being real about our successes, but also our failures. And I think that's all, to me, what authenticism means.
Yeah, and I guess that's particularly pertinent when it comes to children, of course, where, and I'm going to use a generalization here, but young girls watching somebody who's got that filter on, who's spent 3 hours doing the makeup or the hair or whatever it might be in that particular context, that creates an expectation that I need to look like that. So then if they're getting, I don't know, maybe a little bit of acne, which is something that it's such a long time ago, I can't really remember, but I know I had a bit, I think. So that obviously puts that extra pressure on, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel glad that when I grew up, we didn't really have social media. We were just starting to have MySpace and then Facebook when I got into university. But I'm glad that we didn't have it growing up, because I think it creates pressures on young people very early. And there's so much about social media that is positive, and it really is. And the internet and technology, I see it being a very positive thing. Really, it's about connection. But there are ways that I think it's concerning as well. And I do think our younger generation have a huge amount of pressure, and you can't, it's not something you can easily get away from. We're attached to our phones 24/7. And it is quite nice. I wonder in the future whether the cool thing will be to sort of switch off, leave the phones at home, put them away. I mean, as somebody that's involved in brands and communication, that's a strange thing to say, but I think you need to get the balance right. And I think we need to have some regulation in social media, especially for younger people. I think it's turning into, things that create real issues psychologically for people. And we need to consider, we need to be considerate when we're thinking about how we communicate, because it does have a massive effect.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one massive challenge, because I think the genie's out the bottle. And they have actually proven, haven't they, that that the use of a mobile, and this isn't just with kids, this is adults as well, it's bordering on crack cocaine levels. And I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you've mislaid your phone, or you've left your phone at home, and it's almost like a panic.
Yeah, and it's concerning, isn't it? I think it is. I think it's all related to dopamine hits, and there's been certain documentaries recently about how social media companies, constantly, they like to make sure people feel like connected all the time. And yeah, if you lose your phone, it's the biggest panic, isn't it? And sometimes actually when you do lose it, I've lost mine quite a few times, unfortunately, quite careless. But when you do lose it, or you put it down, it's actually the most liberating thing. When you go on holiday and turn it off, leave it at home, at first you've got the panic of what happens if I can't speak to somebody, or if they can't get hold of me. But actually it's the most liberating thing. And I wonder whether we'll end up having just breaks. And detox won't necessarily mean going to health farms, but it will just be anything that involves not having your mobile around, because it's not the end of the world if people can't get hold of you for a few minutes generally. I think it's just healthy, isn't it? But as I said, I think social media and technology has many, many powers for good. But with anything, I think we just need to get a sense of reality, because I think we lose that sometimes. And especially when that, really affects relationships, and you can be sat in the same room as your family, but you're all on your devices. That's sad, isn't it? So I think we need to regulate ourselves if we can.
Are you seeing any kind of increase in, I don't know if pressure's the right word, but is there a much greater demand now in terms of creativity in the communication? I guess I'm coming to it from a point of view of we're bombarded with so much stuff, arguably tidal wave volumes of content. Even people like me and Spencer turn up and start doing things like this, which is another thing driving people's attention, in our back bedroom, our back offices, or our back studios. Is that something you have to think about all the time? Is how do you cut through the noise, I suppose, is the best phrase.
You must be a mind reader, because I just wrote down cutting through noise there.
Wow.
Yeah, it is. It is, because there's so much being sent out on so many channels. You know, when you're scrolling ourselves, you know, you have to think how, when you're thinking about communications and what resonates, you have to think about your own experience as well. And, you know, we sit there scrolling through things. Our mindsets and our I guess our attention spans have decreased so much that something really needs to stand out in order for you to take notice for it. So it does make it harder, and you have to spend a lot of time thinking about, you know, either what channel you're going to use, whether or not you're going to use a long form feature, or you need it to be short and snappy for social. And, you know, everyone talks about sound bites now. People don't want to sit through long lectures anymore, so you have to also work out how to package something in a very concise way that's about sort of sound bites. We like to ingest a lot and quickly, so you want that there immediately. And, you know, I'm in the bad habit now of being able to, you know, think that I've understood something by reading a title or a headline and a sub paragraph, but actually, you know, you've got to think about your timings as well. When do you put content out? When's the best time to reach people? Ultimately, people will seek out information that they, you know, want to ingest. I mean, we all follow things that we feel passionate about. But I think it's just about building relationships, creating sort of, I guess, regularity and understanding, helping your audience understand how you communicate and build that relationship, and ultimately build things that are well written. You know, I mean, it's not just about writing anymore, though. It's about video, and I think more of us watch short form video now to understand narrative. So when we communicate, it's not just about writing, it's also about video creation, podcasts. It is hard. Cutting through noise is hard, but you just have to have faith that you've got the right product, you've developed the right messages, and that, you know, your audience is engaged.
And then when it comes to Extreme E, have you done much work or concluded at this point as to who the target audience is for Extreme E? Is that something you've got developed at this stage?
Yeah, we spent quite a lot of time on audience profiles. You know, essentially what Extreme E is about is about reaching consumers and the car buyers of tomorrow, or today and tomorrow. So that is, you know, who actually buys the car in the family, because it's not just about men when it comes to motorsport. Actually, when it comes to actually buying cars, because the goal of Extreme E is to help accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. I think Formula E was very good in starting the sort of performance-based, sort of showcasing electric vehicle performance. But what Extreme E does is speak specifically about SUVs and cars which can be bought. We're not racing single-seaters that you never see on the roads. We're racing cars and showing EV performance. So yeah, I think it's about people that buy cars, but also the car buyers of tomorrow, because young people are typically those that now think, what's the purpose of something? What is its impact on the planet? So bringing younger generations into motorsport is key. And I think it's people who, are involved in interest in technology and sport, adventure as well, due to its remote nature. But essentially anyone that's going to make a decision about buying their next vehicle, as using sport to showcase EV capabilities is what we're doing here.
I often think that the key to the green agenda and the key to the saving the planet, as it were, is making green, or the green agenda, call it what you like, cool. And I think that what you're doing with Extreme E is certainly helping in that process of making green cool. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. That comes down to a lot of our brand team, who I think have done a brilliant job in kind of creating this identity. But yeah, I think green can be cool. And I think that is our message, is that it doesn't have to, when you think about EVs or think about, things that are better for the planet, it can all be cool. And using the right people, you mentioned before, Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, that all helps to accelerate that image, doesn't it? So it's about finding the right message. We talked about earlier about content, but it's finding the right message, but finding the right people who can be the vehicle for that message as well. And that is really key to it. And I think that's where we've succeeded in this sense more than maybe other competitors is just getting the right people on board to evangelize that message for you. Because sometimes if it's just us that is saying it, then it's easy to think, well, you know, it's being written for a purpose. But when you've got other people experiencing it and then saying, wow, that was really awesome, and it's people that you look up to, that is a great way of getting through the noise, as you say, and really believing it, because it has to be believable, it has to be credible, it has to be real at the end of the day. It's all about being real.
Fantastic. And what a lovely way to conclude. It's all about being real. Might have put that as a sound bite in the promotion of the show. Julia, thanks ever so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute joy to hear what you got to say about Extreme E. I'm now a fan. My wife might not thank you, but I'm certainly a fan, and I'm very much looking forward to the next race. I think the next one is Greenland, did you say?
Yes, we're heading to Greenland at the end of August, which will be absolutely awesome. So thank you, Phil, for taking the interest, and it's amazing to hear talking to fans. It's still unbelievable we've launched this sport and we have a following. So if you ever have any questions, you want any insights, just call me anytime. Always happy to talk about it. So yeah, thank you for anyone that's listened.
I certainly will. Thanks very much then, Julia, and I will catch you again, hopefully very soon, and maybe, who knows, actually even meet you in the real world at some point.
That would be delightful. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much, Julia.
See you. Bye, everyone.